Falmouth Conservation Commission. At this time, please silence your electronic devices. Board members, if you're gonna hold a private conversation, please take it outside. This meeting is being recorded by FCTV. If there is anyone else recording this meeting, please identify yourself for the record. If you are here to speak on any matter before the commission, and we encourage you to do so, please do so from the podium at the appropriate time. State your name for the record and speak into the microphone. First up, we have no minutes to vote, correct?
Well, we got minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I was prepared to vote last week's minutes. which
We
was
voting
sent to
minutes?
us.
They're not on the agenda, sir.
Are they not on the agenda, then we're
All
not
right.
voting minutes.
Request for determination of applicability, Donald C. Rhodes, trustees, the Widgeon RT, I assume that's Realty Trust, 22 Widgeon Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to upgrade to a Title V septic system.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource areas are not confirmed under this RDA.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Request for a hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Michelle and David Terry, 12 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management of Phragmites.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Terry's consultant is traveling from off Cape and is not here right now. Can we table this until he arrives?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Thank you.
Request to extend the existing order of conditions. Pamela Gibberti, 15J Road, North Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4155, requesting a one-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if the applicant is requesting a one-year extension, we recommend that.
And
So
the
moved.
reason?
I believe they're still constructing the house.
Second. They've started.
I believe so. There was a sale involved in the property and the new owners took over. We've been working with them.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Motion, second.
Second.
Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Falmouth Street Nominee Trust and the Penzance Anchorage Nominee Trust, 152 and 160 Penzance Road, Woods Hole, Mass, DEP 25-4116, requesting a one-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the staff is recommending that the board grant the one-year extension. The reason is most of the work could not be, the way the order of conditions was written, a lot of the work that was originally proposed could not start until the wetland restoration had been completed. That wetland restoration was completed this summer. So the wetland from the enforcement order back in 2006 has been completed, as well as restoring the
The other one.
152 parcel when we discovered that violation.
So all that restoration's been completed, and now they're doing the septic
Monitoring
system.
the septic system, the, was it a pool they were putting in over in the back? You will be seeing the septic system, you will be seeing a component of the septic system. So you expect to see an amendment shortly for that.
Okay.
And you'll understand why when you see it. It needed to go through a discharge permit with DEP. So that will be coming, and it's one of the reasons they need the extension.
Okay, may I ask another question?
Mhm.
Sure. These, the applicants' names are different this time, are they not? I thought it was a something family trust that first came in. I never heard the Falmouth
Falmouth
Street
Street
Nominee
Nominee
Trust.
Yep, hang on, let's see.
It's a
what they're-
1,000 of them. We never see the same name.
Well, sometimes we see it
No,
on the
I
same piece of
apologize,
property.
it is the Heinz Penzance Point Nominee Trust, Falmouth Street Nominee Trust.
Well, the Heinz Trust was,
Yeah.
we've had
The
that name
Falmouth,
before.
Falmouth Street Nominee Trust is listed on their request.
Well, I never heard that before. Where does that fit in?
I don't know, I'd have to ask the applicant, but Falmouth Street Nominee Trust is listed on their extension request,
Okay, I'm just,
as is the,
No?
Yeah.
Same DEP, right?
when this originally came in, it was the Heinz something,
they say Heinz, Penzance Point Nominee Trust, Falmouth Street Nominee Trust.
well, it was Heinz something, it
Yeah.
wasn't Penzance.
It was not Penzance.
Well, that's what it's saying now, so I'm not
Okay.
quite sure if it's in
Well,
a
I'm sure
different
it's some
trust now.
Legal trust, yeah.
Yeah, so,
As long
Okay.
as the address is the same.
correct,
So I moved that we grant the extension.
correct.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, a call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Ms. Terry, do you want, do you know? He's here, he just couldn't come right in, so, oh, okay. While we're waiting for a representative, this is gonna be discussed, under your procedure section.
Thank you.
Never mind.
Thank you.
Are we gonna discuss this now?
No.
Should be on the board.
So we're officially stalling.
So I'll make a motion to on-table in anticipation of
The
having
arrival.
somebody.
The door's
I
open.
second.
Pension bills,
Who seconded the?
I did.
Such an enormous building.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to untable the Terry hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Michelle and David Terry, 12 Edgewater Drive, East Falmouth, Mass., for permission to conduct invasive species management of Phragmites.
Thank you, Conservation Commission. Glenn Kravosky from EBT Environmental Consultants, Inc. Should I give you the, we did email you the certificate of mailing. Make sure to give your people that. We do have 13 copies of a revised plan. We talked to Mr. Gilmore of DEP Lakeville. Apologize for the tardiness, accident on 495. We did leave early. So if we can offer you these plans, give them to the
Are they the same plans that were?
it has mean annual high water, mean annual low water on it. That was what was missing on the original plan. This is a project where the original order of conditions was issued, and the gentleman built the house and didn't remove the Phragmites, so we're only here for that, I might say, 800 some odd square feet of Phragmites at the site. There was some clearing of the frag, along with 4 or 5 bushes towards the house or in the western direction. We're here to propose to tarp the Phragmites after it's mowed. First, put a trench along the property boundary using a trenching machine, a 5-foot deep trenching machine. Put the top down 3 to 4 feet. Make sure we're below the frag. This was recommended by conservation staff after a site inspection approximately a few weeks ago. So we're proposing to do that trench, put the poly liner in, and then, and just prior to that, mow the area down, put the top on. We've been successful recently in Oxford and in Sutton with mowing and tarping this small type of area. We have some exhibits, photos that show that it's been effective for us. We did talk to we had an email from, Kevin, thank you, sir, Mr. Newton, and he had looked at the plans today and did say that the commission would be requiring a planting scheme. We did talk in our project description about replacing the 4 to 5 marsh bushes that are there. And then in my recent project description, I did talk about once the frag was killed off, 2 to 3 months of covering, which would be in the spring and early summer, and we'll be checking that, reporting back to the conservation. And then we would plant Spartina alterniflora, and potentially, we didn't add in, but Spartina patens. We have been successful at South Beach in Mashpee, when I did that for DCR over there a couple years ago with the culvert replacements at the town and state beaches. And again, inland, we've been successful with the Phragmites, this approach on Phragmites. It did say in the original conditions that the town would either approve or not approve in the method that we were going to use to get rid of the frags, to remove the frag. And we were just hesitant to use poisons to do it, herbicides, should I say. So we would ask that this method be allowed. This was part of the original marina. There is still some wire out there and debris. You might be aware there's still the tracks that go into the water in this property, part of history. We're not going to touch that. But the area that's shown on your plan, if you have it, again, there's still some debris. Some of it was removed. We walked through it with one of your agents, and we would clean up that debris at the same time. We don't propose to go onto the adjacent property. There's renters there, and by using this trenching machine, we can get right next to the property boundary because it's narrow, but not go onto their property. We would report back at the end of the summer next year to show you the success of the removal, and once it is died off, we would work before the fall or later summer to plant it with the Spartina. The planting scheme, we would hope, again, that we'd be able to modify the plan if you need to see the plants on the plan or a better description of the planting, that we could either, I'm not sure, I've only been in this town a couple times. I did used to work for the Steamship Authority in the early 70s. I've been here for Cell Tower. I had something to do with the sewer plant that's over by Memorial Beach, just south of that, but I'm not too often do I come down this way. We're out of the Oxford area. And the only reason the clients did choose me is because I just did a project for them in North Brookfield. And so we were successful there, so that's why I'm this far down. We would ask that if it is suitable, again, we would, and it might not be, to close the hearing and submit the plan. If that's not suitable, and submit a plan within 4 to 5 days, then we would ask that we, for a continuance, submit the plan to Mr. Newton, and if all is well, we would hope that it be closed at your next meeting so that we can then not come down. Yeah. If you want to see the exhibits of the frag that's been killed by the tarping, imagine if you're I'm into exotic invasives, but not so much frag. We mostly Tartarian honeysuckle, multiflora rose, Japanese barberry, mini excavators, removal, full root systems, 2-year programs. Again, if I didn't say oriental bittersweet, and some Japanese bamboo or knotweed, but that also is a mow till its death on the bamboo without poison. That's my presentation. If you choose to see the exhibits of the dead frag in this, on 146 in Sutton, which was a medical facility I just finished last year, and we topped this year. It was full death, no sugars and starches, and plus no oxygen to the roots with the frag by taking the aerial part of the plant away.
If you could submit those to the record, sir, that would be helpful.
Excuse me, ma'am?
If you could submit those
Yes,
exhibits for
thank
the
you very
record,
much. They're coming in right now.
that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. We have one a revised project description. I'll give you the revised plans. These are, excuse me. This is the small area of frag. Anyone? Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you again. And again, this was just checked again in the last few days. We got untarped approximately 1.5 now, full depth. Here's just to show that it was fragmented. That's our total depth, no growth, and that's the top of the from the surface for the rhizomes.
Interesting.
This is the trenching machine that we're proposing to utilize at the 5-foot depth. And there is a slight project revision. Originally, we were going to mow it to death, which is a long-term method to mow it to death. But the tarping appears to work.
Would you like to see that? Yes. Oh, okay, I'll pass it on to you then. A ditch witch. Yeah.
We have filed the 401 water quality because we're in a salt marsh, talking to Mr. Gilmore.
Can I see that other
Minimum square
photograph?
footage alteration. We did file that with the newspaper local. It will be in the paper this Friday. They'll send us the tear sheet and then the full 401. Mr. Gilmore said today, don't bother Petey, over, kind gentleman, he, get me the hard copies and then they'll take up the 401.
Everybody see this?
Mr. Kowalski, a couple of things. So, one, you just made the statement that you were in Salt Marsh? When we
Well,
go
this
out-
Phragmites area board is, it's a upgradient of the, it is upgrading the mean annual high water, but we would still call it, it's, well, if you don't call it a salt marsh, I won't call it a salt marsh. It's a bordering vegetated wetland.
Yeah, right now. So that brings me to the point where on your plan, you said you were going to replant the Phragmites area with the native bush presently existing on site, and that is Baccharis. So we'd like to see that area planted with Baccharis. I think it would be really helpful in
Like I said,
kind of competing with the Phragmites as it
It is.
wants to return. So I think just putting the tarp down for 3 months and then planting it with salt marsh grass, I think that Phragmites will return.
We wrote that we would inspect it
Okay.
during the first couple of months under the top, as I just did in Sutton. Noted that nothing was there, re-put the top back down, and again, checked it. In August, nothing had grown up, removed the top, and has been nothing growing back because of lack of oxygen to the root, which is what comes in through the green part,
Yep.
green part of the plant. And also looking at what's been done in Europe, we researched some of that with the starches and sugars and diminishing energy to the root. And what we ended up having was the fifth of the root of the rhizome was totally rotted after we were completed. This is the one just recently in Sutton.
Okay, so I think the staff's concern is we would like to see more woody shrubs along that instead of the salt marsh grasses, because then you're just gonna have, if you're putting that root barrier in, you're just gonna have this little patch of salt marsh that's really, I think the Baccharis would allow a little bit more wildlife habitat in that area, as well as we need to see on the plan the native bayberry that was removed in this area. Remember, we showed the pictures when we were on site?
We saw the bayberry along, paralleling the water body. We didn't.
No, the pictures we showed you when Kevin and I were on site about the before and after pictures of the bayberry.
I didn't note that it was bayberry from the pictures, but if that is what the commission is looking for in their agent, northern bayberry and Baccharis, then we would give you a planting scheme.
Okay, but the bayberry has to be beyond the area of Phragmites, because remember when we showed you the pictures, it had been removed?
Can you, thank you, we will do that. If you could supply or scan and send those photos over, so we can see them. But
Oh,
we don't
absolutely.
argue with you at all on that point. We're not here to, if there's bayberry and you have a place where you would like to see northern bayberry, if it's upgradient of the frag area now, that I didn't know, I might have gone across it, but I didn't quite hear that point, we'll replace them where they were.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, so we're gonna have to see that. I think it's where you have I think it basically extended further into the property. I don't quite remember if it's up gradient, but I do think you know where your 2 is on your contour line? I think it was in more of that area.
Right.
Yep.
That Baccharis was also towards that western side of the frag, it was at the edge, but
Yep.
we did note the Baccharis. In fact, we had talked to Mr. Werner Hall of Rare Species Program, Westboro, and also New England Wetland Plants, and at the time, the photos I had, it wasn't clear if it was Baccharis or another species, and since when I went there that time with you, I did take a small stock of it and didn't note it that it is the Baccharis. So we were in that area, if you're looking at where the 2 contour is, the 2 and the 3, in that general area for elevation.
Well, we're looking
And that's still
for,
within the bordering vegetated wetland, and
Yep.
sure.
well, yeah, we're just looking for the area that the Phragmites removal, to be replaced with some plant species in the area that was removed,
Yes.
that to be replaced. So if you could depict those on the plan, that would be great.
Good.
So the tarp, so I have a better understanding, you're going to you're gonna mow and then lay the tarp
Mow
when?
it flush to the ground,
Yeah.
that's right, correct, ma'am.
And when are you gonna put the tarp in?
Immediately after we mow. We would propose to do this though in the spring,
Okay,
because it doesn't, the growing season's nearly over.
okay.
So we would, and also if there was a density, obviously there's different densities, 6-foot density, 5-foot radius on a radius. If I could get from you, if you chose to give me the type of density you normally see, we'll note that on the plan, that that's the
Absolutely. Okay.
density that we'll be giving with the 2 species of bush.
Okay, that's fine.
That way,
Oh.
I think everybody might be.
That's fine. And we have the root barrier, and I think
Yes.
that's really all we discussed out in the field, correct, Kevin? Okay, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Betsy, you want to start?
Yeah, so it's always interesting to see patches of Phragmites like this, and then you say, how did this happen? And,
We know how it happened.
well, you have a crushed seashell driveway right onto a wetland. And so you're gonna continually to get waves of fresh water washing there. And this whole area from the 3-foot line down is a wetland. And it was a nice spongy wetland today. So I'm a little bit concerned about the bareness of that wetland.
Well, that's where we,
Are those docks still used? I mean,
Yes.
it's all being kind of mowed. It's either a driveway or mowed. They are being used?
Your docks are being used, correct, and this is how you bought it, and we took it that this was how it was originally permitted, the previous order of condition.
We purchased the property and,
Ms. Terry, unfortunately, you're gonna have to come up to the microphone.
so Michelle Terry, we purchased the property with what we thought was just an open order of conditions in 2017 at the end of the summer. Or actually, I'm sorry, it was the end of July 2017. We were told it was a very easy to get the orders closed. So this was part of this house was built in the early 2000s, and I think the dock was put in around 2006 by the previous owner. So we haven't made any modifications, just trying to clean it up a little bit.
To close out
And close out
the
the
issue
orders,
that was left
we
from
thought.
the previous order, because this order is still on your deed, is that correct?
That's correct.
So-
There's an open order of conditions, and we closed on the property, purchased the property with the help of the attorneys, doing a very, very small holdback because we thought this was gonna be an easy thing. So we didn't build the docks, we didn't build the house.
So, but while you're there, can I ask you?
Sure.
So it says driveway to the water. What drives down to there?
So there was an old,
Is
there
that
was an
used as a
old
laundry?
ramp that was, I think, was it protected? It was,
It was, the rails are right there, so
Yeah,
that,
there's
this was
an-
part of the marina
correct.
at one point, then was somehow sold off or cut off by the person that built both houses side by side. These, both number 12 and 14, is that correct, were built by the same developer?
They were,
And
and from what we were told, we were told that there was some, I talked to the DEP, the EPA, we were told that there was some protection there with those rails, and I think that may be why they weren't touched.
Historical, I thought you said historical at the time.
That's what they told us.
So they just left the rails there, but that was.
But I wasn't,
Marinas to get
yeah.
boats into the.
Yeah, but it's not functioning now, is my
No.
question.
No,
no.
Okay. And by putting this root barrier, you're hoping, so you're trying to fulfill your order of conditions, right? Is that-
The
If I-
previous owner's
That's why
order
you're
of
here.
conditions, correct.
Yeah.
the old order that's
Well,
expired.
it's yours now.
It is mine now, I'm finding that out.
And
If I may, Betsy, when the project was first permitted, and yes, there was that way to the water, that was existing.
okay,
There was a small patch of Phragmites on the property. The previous owner, part of the order of conditions was to eradicate the Phragmites.
oh, now it's a bigger
That
patch.
never happened. And so now it's a slightly larger patch. There is a large patch of Phragmites on the adjacent property, because it's also migrated that way as well. And
So
that
you just
house-
want to keep it from coming back into here?
Basically, our advice was, we couldn't require them to do an eradication project on their property, knowing that Phragmites would come right back in. So the
Right.
only way to stop it is with some sort of root barrier.
Okay,
That said, when, this first was being looked at for compliance with another consultant, it was then determined at that point that there had been the removal of like a large stand of bayberry, and they kind of put the brakes on it and kind of reached out to us. So that's why we're here, to eradicate the Phragmites and to also replace the plant material that was on site, as I don't remember when it was removed, within the last year or so.
so my concern is, this is still a wetland, and right next door is healthy Phragmites. And so you're bound to get Phragmites seeds here, and you're creating conditions with the driveway coming down. So I understand what you're trying to do now, but I'm just trying to point out that this problem is gonna happen again. It's likely that it will get reestablished
When I say,
because you have the conditions that are set up for it.
well, as most Phragmites, at least what I'm familiar with, it's underground rhizomes that spread them. Not that there isn't a seed issue, but with the bushes also shading the ground. And if we get them dense enough in there, like most bushes that shade the ground, they help to prevent the seed systems from coming in. If this is
Yeah,
what
well,
they,
we have a lot of areas here, it's been mapped for the last 20 years in Falmouth, and there are
Yes.
lots of areas where it started with seed. Areas where fresh water was running down a road that ended in a coastal pond.
Right.
So you had a lot of fresh water coming in, you had nutrients coming in. Somehow the seed got there, probably from the air, and then patches started. And once the patch starts, then it migrates.
well, the client will need to monitor that area, and I don't know how we prevent things from 20 years down the road, but monitoring is one method to see if there are new patches coming in.
Yeah,
They
so
are
I'm
going
just
down
trying
3
to
to 4 feet.
avoid you having this issue again.
I understand, and I think we spoke to the commission at the property about some future monitoring procedures, but that's really going to be Glenn's expertise, not mine. I
Well,
think.
you'll know when you see it, because you'll think it's beautiful when it first comes up.
No, I know what they are now, trust
know.
me.
You've seen it, you know what it is, and it will be a task or a part of the order to keep it monitored. And with the barrier 3 feet to 4 feet down, poly barrier, and sometimes we also look at, it might be just a hair over the surface, because we see that rhizome, some obviously climbing or growing over the surface. So I had the issues in Douglas with that, the high school.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You,
I'm good, thanks.
Maury?
I just had simple questions. You're gonna take the mowed material away, you said?
The frag material?
Yep.
Yes, we will.
When you mow it, you'll
deposit-
take it away?
We would,
The mowed material, will you take
yes,
it
so,
away?
instead of just mowing it off, we would cut the stalks, bundle the stalks, and then mow the bottom. So there's none of the plume. And I did talk to Mr. Terry today, he couldn't be here, but we would prefer to remove the stalk this fall to not have any more seed stock or seed drop.
Okay,
And
and,
when we're removing these other, I just did a solar farm last night, and we normally work to remove the seed stock immediately before we alter the ground, so that seed stock such
Doesn't
as
regerminate.
autumn olive or oriental bittersweet or tartarian gets down onto that fresh ground.
and with that being said, where are you gonna bring it to?
Well, it could
Because
be,
we have it's a tough place to get rid of it. Nobody wants it because it
because it's-
recedes. A lot of people burn it, you know.
That's what I was wondering, is if we could,
well, if there is a burning season that we have, and if
You
it
will.
was-
In the winter, you'll have a burning season. That's why I'm gonna, because you're not gonna do this in the spring, but you're gonna cut now.
we would prefer to
January
cut it.
1st until April 1st, you can
Right.
burn. So,
we certainly could do that.
okay, just because a lot of people think they can bring it to the town landfill, or they can't.
There's a fire pit on the property, and if we were to minimize the amount that we're gonna burn, as I've done on other plants, we cut the top off.
Just-
This is what
yeah,
our purple
yeah.
stripe is what I do.
Right,
We
yep.
take the top off, we remove it so the seed doesn't drop, then we take the plant that species.
Okay.
So we could also just take the tops, you know, it's not a big area, I think I had 870 square feet.
Yeah, it's not
Take the
huge.
tops,
Bag
put
them
'em-
and bag them and tag them and put them in the dump too, you know, in the pickup, because, just so it doesn't go to our landfill
Okay.
or into the local brush recycling places, because it just keeps perpetuating. That being said, how are you gonna control the creep? Because I see that ditch witch, and you say you're gonna dig 3 feet. Does that, you said it originally in your narrative that it's a 12 to 18-inch bucket, but I saw the ditch witch, which is only a narrow dig.
We had a problem with the mini excavator was that to straddle the property line and not have the direct permission of the abutter because it's owned by a mortgage company.
So I tried in good faith getting the neighbors at number 8 to work alongside with us, but we found that the property is still bank-owned it's bank-owned, but it's being serviced by some off-site company, and the servicing company is not the owner, and they're renting it out. It's a really odd situation, so they can't work with us.
So we switched to something that is available, which is the ditcher, which gets us closer to the property line without going over the property line.
Okay.
And also, we would stake out that property line to ensure we're not going over.
But on your property, you will use the deeper dig.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on something. Mr. Grafowski, earlier when you were talking, you said when I asked you about when you wanted to put the tarp down, you said you were gonna cut and do it in the spring.
Yes, ma'am.
And now you're telling the board you're going to do it in the fall, which is it,
I didn't say
fall?
that.
No,
No, we didn't.
cutting the stalks.
He's just cutting
Cuts the flowers off.
Cut the flowers off in the
Flowers and
fall,
cutting the stalks down and have it prepped so when spring comes, as soon as.
you'll mow it in the spring.
And mow
Okay,
what the
got
little
it.
comes up
Got it.
in the
Okay.
spring. We
Okay.
mow that down with those new
Okay,
stalks.
just wanted to
And then
clarify.
top it right then.
What's the downside of doing it in the fall?
'Cause
No, you wanna do it in
new
the fall.
stuff to go up, because you wanna deplete what's in
Wanna
the
do it
roots.
in the fall.
You want the new stuff to come in the spring,
Yeah,
to
To tar.
deplete what's
Used
down
up
you
there.
wanna
that
do,
energy,
you
yeah,
wanna
it's
do
sort
it in the
of-
Yeah.
fall. I prefer it done in the fall, yeah. Okay, that's it.
Kevin?
This is a question for you guys.
Sure.
Do we know if, now that I know that it's owned by some mortgage company, is there an order of conditions on the adjacent property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That dilapidated dock? No,
Hmm.
not that I'm aware of. That's the little A-frame house?
Mhm.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
That's all, thanks.
Courtney?
And the tarp is 100% effective, is that what you're saying?
It has been in 2 recent this year cases, the one at, it's called McLaren Junkyard in North Oxford, where we've used it, and then this one in Sutton, which we have on this. It has been, because without the chlorophylls, the sugars and the starches, which come out of that chlorophyll, and also in reviewing frag and where the oxygen gets to the root, it is from the aerial portion of the plant. So once you remove the aerial portion, you're killing it in 2 ways. No oxygen to the root, and you diminish from the sugar, from the starches to sugar coming out of the chlorophyll, you're weakening the root from that. And what we had with the piths, or the center of the rhizomes on this one in Sutton, they were totally rotted inside. It was still a hard case, but they were rotted in the center of the rhizome. And
So you
again,
never-
we monitored it a couple more months, and it has worked. It's sort of, studying botany, in which I have, it just is a pure fact, things die when you don't have enough sunlight. In this case, it dies also because of oxygen, because it is in the water table.
And I understand that, it seems pretty logical. But you, in your experience, you've never had any regrowth?
This program, from last year to this year, and twice this year, I have it, not in this method, but I'm not gonna claim to be the expert on frag. I permit wetland projects, I remove exotic invasives that I mentioned earlier. We had to use this recently in Sutton, which is keen on exotic invasive plant removal, and it was 2 small patches, and it has worked successfully there. Again, the top has been off now for a month and a half to 2. The last picture I believe you have was just a couple days ago. No sign of regrowth. So we're gonna monitor it and report back to you,
Yeah.
is what I wrote.
Yeah,
How would you deal with it if for some chance you did have some regrowth?
We would keep the top on there as I said, we were gonna remove the top, look and see how it's going, report back then, and then retop it and then keep it covered till the end of the summer. We would expect it to be no growth at that time. If there was a, I don't expect any growth, is all I'm saying, from my experience. It just, the plant needs chlorophyll and sugars. It needs oxygen, the root system. So it's just and has been studies in Europe over this also. That's what we reviewed.
And then the next year is when you replant.
If it's early enough in the season, say in late August, early September, these plants are still available at that time.
So you'd be, yeah.
We would look to plant, and obviously there's moisture there, so we're not so much concerned with desiccation at that time of the year. Dry root systems, it's just a matter of buying good stock. And New England Wetland Plants who we use, I don't know if there's more places down this way, but that Amherst site is where we're getting all our wetland stock. And we've had extreme success with their plants. I just planted a Chevy dealership and I lost one plant over the year, and everything else is lush. But we've been replicating. I've been doing wetland permitting since '86, so I'm pretty confident on that point.
One clarification point on your tarp, Mr. Grabowski. When you're going to remove the tarp to plant, you're gonna remove it. We're not gonna cut the tarp and try to plant the
Oh,
plant.
no.
Okay,
We're,
thank you.
we're gonna show the
Yeah.
commission, if we remove it, we'll leave what I
Yeah,
did
it has to
inside.
go.
We left it open to then wait and see what new is going on. And then I pulled up those little stalks and I went into the ground, and all I had was total death under there with no green at all. It's just, so we would not immediately plant, we would untarp it, leave it for some duration, at least a month or something, and then show the commission, report to the commission, and then we'll propose to plant at that point.
Okay, can you do us a favor, Mr. Grabowski, and I don't know if you had it detailed in here. Could you kind of give me a little timeline? When you do your revised plan, just write me up a timeline. You're
I'll
gonna.
put it on the
Yeah,
plan.
you're gonna cut the
Aerial.
aerials, yes, and then you cut the stock, and you put it, and you're gonna check it, send us a monitoring report,
Yes, ma'am.
then check it again if it's, you still have some concerns, retarp, give it another month or two.
I had to hesitate to say retop, because I'm never gonna remove the full top until this is complete. So what we did on the one in Sutton, we picked up and removed the portion of the top, left that open, then finally at the end, when there clearly was nothing even coming up there, then I removed the entire top.
Okay, that's fine, yeah, so if you could just kind of detail that, out,
We will.
that would be great, thank you.
Courtney, you good?
No more, I'm good.
Russ? No questions.
No
Steve?
questions?
Peter?
No questions?
Susan?
None, thank you.
Mark?
I'd like to make sure we put in the conditions, we get a good diary of what you've done.
Yes, sir.
Dates and pictures where appropriate. and also
Photos, photo
description of materials, what this park is, 5 mil or 10 mil or whatever it is. Just so, I mean, I think this sounds like a great idea. I'd love to have enough documentation, so if we see it works, we can repeat it.
We'll give you the mill on both the barrier suggested by your agents and the mill, and what somewhat what I'm looking at is roofing, black roofing top on it. It's very thick, I don't want anything that any light goes through. We were just looking at one that was a blue top, and my preference clearly is like zero light. And so we'll document it, and thank you, our pleasure, beyond what will be in the condition too.
Good. Okay.
Mr. Krasowski, unfortunately, the board has received recent guidance, it's actually their next agenda topic from their town council and also out of the southeast region of DEP, that they don't want us closing hearings for revised plans, so I hope you understand that.
I understand.
So we do need to continue this, unfortunately,
What would be the date?
my board likes to see everything a week prior to their hearings. And unfortunately, their October 23rd hearing is completely booked. So even if you got the plans in on the 16th, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to hear this again until the 30th.
October 30th would be our
Yeah.
next meeting for this.
Now, if you were to cut the portion of the plant, could that be done after October 30th?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
There's no
all right, I
snow,
just
it's
didn't
not an
wanna
issue.
kinda, yep, okay, that's fine, unfortunately,
I-
that's the next available meeting day.
I guess the only issue with the later in the day.
Halloween is October 31st, not October 30th.
Oh.
Yeah, we were here for Halloween last year.
Oh, okay,
This year, it's the day after,
all right.
so it's
Is
the
it basically
30th.
just getting the plan revised to you?
And the methodology and everything else, and as I just said, we've received
No,
recent.
no, I was
variance.
just thinking of putting it on an earlier agenda, just,
I mean, the
because
plan would, you would want to see the plan and the methodology as well, that would have to come in on the 16th.
yeah, okay.
We have 6 RDAs, 1 continued RDA, 5 brand-new notices, an amended, and you have a certificate of compliance on the 23rd.
You want the 30th, right?
Well, the only, one thing I don't know about the frag is actually when it starts dropping seed. So I could research that, that should be a simple thing to find, but I'll already be gone and I'll be back at the office. So the whole thing is, as we know, what berry crops are mast crops, they're dropping right as soon as frost hit. I'm not totally on the frag as far as seed drop. So we would, obviously, if we're looking at the pure project with the seed not there and then that bagged, the one thing I might say is the sooner, because I don't know at this point when the seed drops, we would want the seed off that plant, at least the plume gone.
Mr. Kravosky, you could always reach out to the staff and we'll work with you even if you were in the process of this.
With the plume issue?
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
the board has a question about the methodology you're proposing.
Yes.
It's just the revised plan and your methodology, so if you come back and say, staff, you know, I would feel more comfortable if we could cut the plumes this date. You work with Kevin and
Thank you.
I while we're going through this hearing process. Would that work for you?
Thank you very much.
Not a problem, sir.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to the 30th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of continuance, say aye. Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you, board, very much.
Thank you, and just stay in touch with us, Mr.
Oh,
Kravosky, okay? Thank
We'll be
you.
working on this revision tomorrow.
All right, great, thank you.
We don't get frost until mid-November.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we're a little warmer down here. Where's my stuff?
We had frost at, 3 or 4 days ago at the house.
I'm from Worcester.
There you go. You know where Oxford is then. Thank you again, sir.
Just for the record, did you have one for the record?
Jen?
What was that, sir? What?
Thank you.
What, Steve?
I was speaking to the
I'd
chair.
say
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
have it for the record, thank you.
Somebody said Jen,
Like
so
it.
I looked up.
Anybody want this?
Other business, commission
You're the rookie,
hearing
you gotta take it.
procedures.
Oh, he's good. Jen, I got this already. You don't have to explain it to me.
I know, but I have to explain it to everybody. I want it on
No,
record.
no, no, I mean, I got what I have to do for this.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so, I handed this to you. It's been a while since we've had a really full complement of this board, so it's a good time to kind of go over procedures again. Mary, when she was chair, was kind of doing this, and then we just kind of let it lapse, because a lot of times we didn't even have 7 people here, so.
Just saying, I was blocking.
So,
I heard that.
so basically, the board is obviously 10 of you. You're the largest board in the Commonwealth. You have 7 full-time members and 3 alternates. So basically, the quorum of the board is 7 people. So 7, they like to talk to me. So,
Do you need a microphone?
no. So basically, we're gonna have to kind of establish a procedure.
You
need a
need a
microphone.
microphone, Jen.
You
And
could
I'll be
stand at
back
the
if I can
podium.
share. No. If you want me to, I will.
And
Now,
and
why don't
state
you
your name for the
stand-
record.
Why don't you stand at the podium?
I think it would be easier.
Okay, that's fine.
Since you
You
don't
want
have a
me to walk back
microphone
and
at your
forth?
desk.
How many times do I walk
I feel
back and
guilty
forth?
when I lean forward to look at you and I'm blocking somebody else off.
No, that's fine.
There you go.
Okay, so there's 7 full-time members. You're having fun with this, aren't you, Russell?
I just blocked him, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I know. So the quorum is technically 7 of you. So if we all read the procedures, the chair will call the meeting to order, and we're gonna right off the bat establish a quorum. tonight it would be the 7 full-time members that are able to vote to close or continue a hearing tonight, okay? It does not mean that the 3 alternates cannot participate, and cannot, be a part of the hearing. You just can't vote to close or continue. Now, if we don't have, so what I said is, for that purpose, Betsy's the keeper of the record. She's gonna write down everybody's who's here. It's because it's important, because for the alternates that are sitting here tonight, let's say on October 30th, for example,
I'm not
missing.
here.
I'm not here.
okay, there we go. It's not the 23rd, it's the 30th, and then we'll pick on Kevin later. So let's say Steve, Betsy, and Maury, who have all raised their hand, are not gonna be here on the 30th. At that point, because the alternates were here this evening and participated in the hearing, but you weren't on the voting quorum to close or continue the hearings, you would be then eligible to be part of the quorum on the 30th. So Susan, to be part of the quorum, you have to have attended every hearing and participated in the hearings.
As well as the other alternates that,
Well,
What about,
whoever,
right?
so let's say Mark's not there, yeah. So, and this is just not aimed at you, it's aimed at like procedures for the board to keep the board, consistent. So, that's great. So, I mean, if you weren't here, let's pick on Mark. If Mark wasn't here tonight, but he was here on the 30th,
You can't.
He wouldn't.
I couldn't vote.
It's not on the
I
forum.
wouldn't-
you couldn't vote, you could be brought up as a voting member of that hearing, the whole hearing process, but you wouldn't be part of the hearing of that particular project, of let's say 12-1. Okay, does that make sense? Okay.
Jen,
Peter?
what's the minimum quorum
The
of,
minimum quorum is a majority of the board. The majority of the board is 7. So a majority of 7 is 4. 7 full-time members. 7 full-time members is the board.
so
7.
if we don't have 7 people here,
No, you can have, as long as you have a majority of the board, you can vote a project. So you've been here where there's only been like 4 of you.
Yeah.
That's the majority of the board. You can still vote a project. You can still go forward with the hearing. It's when we drop to 3 of you that we can't have the hearing or we can't vote a project.
That doesn't happen
it-
then.
Well, it has in the
Oh, in the
past
past.
happened. Oh, it
Not
has.
recently.
Hasn't
It
happened for a
hasn't
long
happened
time.
recently, but I mean, Maury and I, Betsy and I remember, it has happened
Yeah, but it hasn't happened for a long,
for a long time. So,
you remember,
again,
we
the
remember,
board
but
is
everybody else, I think, it
7
hasn't happened.
people with the 3 alternates to make up the quorum if those aren't remember. And when I sat on this board 15 or so years ago, it was an issue. We were 5 and 2 back then. And between the time that I left the Conservation Commission and I came back as your administrator, the town petitioned the legislature to change the makeup of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. There's special legislation that says you guys can be 7 and 3 and
It
not 5
trains
and 2.
more people.
What?
It trains more people.
Yes, it does.
And it also serves the public.
Note that the quorum appointed for that hearing may not be the same quorum that's voting on the orders of conditions, because those are contingent to who was at any particular hearing, okay? And if an alternate is required to establish the quorum, the chair shall alternate each week which alternate is brought up, to keep it fair. Does that sound
Could I
good?
just make one-
Everybody agree, everybody understand?
Can I make one statement?
Sure.
So, almost everybody kind of gets this, because this is how we do it. Susan, you probably think this is Greek, but don't worry. It'll all make sense.
it's very clear to
We'll-
me.
We'll tell you.
I can do math.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll tell you when we want you to vote.
It's just, we just need to be careful with our
Not-
procedures
not
with all
unclear.
of you. Since this board has always treated their participating member in the hearings. It really is, we just have to have really good record keeping in case of, you know, a challenge to anyone. So it's just all about record keeping.
So, to be clear, the alternate or alternates that are technically not voting that night can still participate in the
Correct, oh, absolutely. They're still part of the
questions
hearing.
and comments.
Yeah.
So,
They have to participate in order to be able to be on a voting quorum for an order of conditions.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yes, absolutely.
Can't vote on something you haven't heard about.
Yeah, there is actually, yeah, I don't know, yes, Courtney?
Just to be clear, so at one point, the practice was that if 7 of the full members of the commission weren't here, and there were a couple of alternates, the chair at the beginning of the meeting used to appoint up 1 or 2 to create the 7.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
that's
Now-
what we're doing.
That's what we're saying
That's what
we're
we're
gonna do.
doing.
So we're going back to that process?
Yes.
Or is it by default, if there are 6 full-time members and 3 alternates, all of the 3 alternates count?
No, we'll vote one up for the
No,
purposes of
we're gonna have
voting to
7
close and continue a
people
hearing.
for voting.
to comply with the state law, we have to technically appoint
Okay,
until we have
so we're
some.
going back to that. All right.
Yeah, remember Mary used to do?
Huh?
That's what Mary used to do. When Mary was chair. Yeah, yes?
Kevin?
An alternate who's not appointed can't vote to approve to close the hearing
Or to continue.
or to continue.
That's it.
And what about the orders of conditions?
The orders of condition will depend on who's here the night the orders of condition is being voted on.
Okay.
So if it's,
So, even if you're, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you'd still, even if you weren't voting, you weren't eligible to vote, okay?
only to close the hearing or to continue it. That's-
Okay, but you could still comment on
Still
the,
participating.
Oh, yeah, you can still participate.
okay.
Yeah, and you may be
Because
voting on the
your
order of
vote-
conditions because
Your
one
voting
of the full members might be gone.
required.
Right,
Let's say
okay.
you're here, you know, let's say.
Yeah, I think that's where
I'm
I'm,
gonna pick on Mark, or I'm gonna pick on Peter, so, Peter, I'm picking on you. So Kevin, Peter, you're not here tonight.
We got it.
You're out to dinner someplace fabulous tonight, right?
Don't tell my wife.
And Kevin is here,
Yeah.
okay? When it comes to voting in order of conditions, Kevin,
Mhm.
Peter may be here that night, but because he did not hear one of the hearing dates of that particular project, he would not be eligible to be on the voting order of conditions quorum.
He knows that.
Yeah,
I-
yeah,
I guess I want like a minor clarification here.
okay,
The night you vote on the order of conditions,
yes.
we usually talk about,
Who's on the quorum?
well, we usually talk about what's in the orders of condition.
Yeah, and can't everybody participate
Oh, yeah,
at
I
that
think we
point?
can all-
Everybody
And everybody can
participate.
participate, oh, okay.
The only
Everybody
people-
but, well, if
No,
Mark wasn't here or Peter for one of the hearings, how do they
No,
participate?
everybody who was at all the
The
hearings
hearings,
can participate
Okay,
in the discussion,
okay.
but
So all I gotta do is be
Well-
sure to miss at least one of the meetings,
To go home early.
and I can go home early.
That's exactly
Yep,
right.
you got it.
hey, well, how come everybody's shaking their
take
head
note
on
of
that?
I was in Florida. I was in the Caribbean, right?
Yeah, planning strategy, okay, so that's that, and I gave you this, so it's just a little bit of record keeping for us, that's all. Okay, can I go to that, Kevin?
Cover the revised plans.
Okay, so you, all received, and Susan, I think your email bounced back to me, but then I sent it to you separately, did you get the, email from our town council?
No. Let me see what you have for an email address.
Okay.
I've got another ones for
Can you
you.
deal with that later?
You know what, it bounced back, cause did you get that one? I thought I had sent it to you. Yours had
No.
bounced back.
Here, I'll give it, can I write on this?
No, you know what it
Okay.
was, it's because I had put, you can keep that. I had put 3 Rs in your name and not 2.
Oh,
so it bounced
there are
back.
only 2.
I was typing real quick, okay. So just on the revised plan issue, and because this board loves, you know, I mean, we all make, you know, be accommodating and help an applicant get through the process, and I understand that, and I understand the board's desire to work with people, and I think that's great. Unfortunately, we have received guidance not only from your council, your new associate council, but also from DEP. The new DEP circuit rider, who some of you saw when he came to give the presentation on invasive species. So Andrew has sent something, and Andrew represents the southeast region, has sent guidance, and that's the other one I sent, and Susan, this is for.
I did get something on the DEP. You sent me something.
All right, well, you can have that, I have two copies here, just in case. So, basically, DEP is recommending that we do not close a hearing and have a revised plan submitted after the close of the public hearing, no matter how small. And your associate council and your town council's office is basically echoing that quite strongly. Doesn't matter if we're only missing a PLS stamp, if we wanna move the limit of work, because, it just, they're advising against it. And
No
I
more Mr.
know-
Nice Guy.
Can I suggest that you write to all
We are,
our
yeah.
regular people?
I did suggest that earlier.
Yeah.
No, we're going to do that. I needed to have this discussion with you first.
Right.
Before I, let the engineering community know that your guidance coming out of not only your attorney's office, but also Southeast Region, is that no matter how small the revision is, and I know it's going to cause some clogging of the agenda, so hopefully, you know, after a few little bumps in the road, everybody will get on board and start looking at their plans before they submit them a little bit more closely.
Thank you.
No problem. So, anything else
I just
the
had
board wants to talk about?
one comment on that also. And I also think sometimes we do have very minor changes. And it's just a blip on the screen, and it can be continued to the next week and move forward, you know, the PLS stamp or the limit of work, or we want
We've done it
blueberries instead of
before.
viburnums.
We don't close hearings if we don't have
I
we
know.
don't have natural heritage's
I know.
comments. And I can predict whether natural heritage is gonna have a comment. And multiple times, we have told an applicant, you don't have to attend the hearing,
Right.
we're just continuing it for a DEP
Right.
number, for
So it's not a
natural
big
heritage.
change. I mean, it's really not a huge change, and the only thing is maybe it will, hopefully, when you get the letters out to them, they'll realize that when you give them guidance prior to them even filing, that they take your
Pay
suggestion.
attention.
And when you say this probably won't work, that they might not continue down that path, so that we can, you know, they don't get continued when, like, we have 7 or 8 or 10 changes. So I think it's good.
So I've talked to Jen about this before. People have, this has gone on for years. People say, well, why don't you give us a list of what you want? We already know that people know what they're supposed to have. It's the same people that don't have the same things. And Jen should not be making the list. If you're a professional engineer or a professional land surveyor, and you come before the board on a regular basis, you should have your own checklist, so that you don't get here and you don't have the mooring field, you don't have the depths,
We'll put
et
together
cetera.
something that says, for example, but not limited to
There
these
you go.
examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that
Because-
wouldn't hurt
Ample.
anything.
Yeah, it'll kind of remind them.
Yeah.
Couple of things that we don't, more.
Data sheets, that sort of stuff.
stamps,
Things we don't
bu-
forget.
you know, all your buffer zones.
Mm-hmm.
By no means is that an inclusive.
Number of trees on a plan, caliper inch.
Something we
Yeah,
see
I
a
mean,
lot.
it's the-
This is
Yeah,
not,
I don't
not
see the
limited to
downside to
this
offering
list.
that.
I don't either.
I mean, we could come up with that kind
Yeah,
of,
but not limited,
But
not limited,
right.
Yeah, but not limited.
a guidance,
Yeah,
a guide.
a partial list of things not to forget on your plan.
Something we see a lot of, so,
Something,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
something
that's
that
it.
we
The
see
stuff we see
people
missing,
forget.
yeah.
constantly, I
Right.
mean,
mean,
So,
you know-
I
you
just
know, the-
wanted you to be aware, because
Elevation.
it is the practice of this board to
It'd be nice.
help the applicants through the process, to try to, you know, make it easier for everybody.
Kevin, if you draft something up like that and then pass it around, we'll add what we,
I thought you were asking for this, Kevin.
and then,
That was very nice.
No, I mean, the reality of it is, if a presentation, if a presentation comes into us
common stuff that's missed.
and it's complete, and all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted, and they've covered all the issues, you know, these areas get closed real quick. Where they drag out is when guys come in and go, well, I wanna know what you think, or they've forgotten to put all the trees on. And in fact, it's human nature, once you start with these holes, you know, then Maury jumps in, and then everybody else jumps in, and now the hearing gets continued.
Wow.
And, you know, it's unfortunate because the client's the one that pays for it.
Yes, they are.
So, just wanted to point out, before I started saying, from the chair over there, that I don't recommend, you know, the board
Great.
close the hearing and issue a revised plan. I really did want you to see the guidance coming out of DEP. And then I had specifically, after a conversation with council yesterday where this issue was raised, did ask council, as you can say, Jen, at your request, have her put something in writing to me, so it's on record from them. Okay?
So there it is.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion.
Second.
I didn't make it yet.
Always such a
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Oh, I saw that pen come out.
Thank you, everyone.